Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, as always, Brian McNichol.
Good morning and hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah, I think all these things will stick with us for a while. All right.
I don't plan on changing.
All right. Our weekly or bi-weekly weather report. So we got this. What is it? Is it a hurricane? I guess a hurricane, right? Hurricane Idalia.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hit landfall in Florida. I guess Governor DeSantis is warning people about potential big waves and stuff like that. But I guess it's supposed to hit in an area that's kind of low lying and not very inhabited. So that's probably a good thing,
Right.
and all of that. But it was kind of interesting because I follow a lot of business stuff, and kind of a corollary to this whole thing was a story about the great Warren Buffett, and he has his hands in lots and lots of businesses, but they make a lot of money in insurance. He owns Geico Insurance, and they do a lot of other things too. But apparently earlier this year, he said, he was hoping for a very good reinsurance market in Florida. He thinks that was a place that a lot of money was to be made. And reinsurance is the business of basically taking on the risk from the insurance companies, right? They basically take on these risks and they hope to profit by the premium, whatever they collect, and versus what they have to pay out. But this storm will probably cause some damage, and some others were saying maybe Warren's crystal ball was a little cloudy here, depending upon how this and other storms go, because we're not through the storm season yet for these areas.
Right. And it's not a terrible bet though, because hurricanes have, we're at a kind of a historical low level of hurricanes in recent years. Like that's the calmest the seas have been since the Civil War. So, there's a lot of, things can happen and whatnot, but there's for some reason we're not getting hurricanes at the rate we used to get them, and when we get them, they're not usually as damaging as they're now. It runs up when you say the dollar total of damage, those run up because there's a lot more development on the sea. There's a lot more people trust the ocean now, basically, and don't mind building by it and sinking a lot of money into it and so forth. I mean, the President Obama, lives right on the ocean in Martha's Vineyard. So, a lot of these people who, would have reason to know if global warming was going to send us a bunch of deadly hurricanes don't believe that it will.
It's interesting. I mean, I hadn't really, only when you were starting to mention the cost of it, in which I wasn't even thinking about, one of the problems, I mean, it's not necessarily that the storms that we're getting are necessarily intensifying. I mean, you made a good point there about the development that people have. I mean, Americans, for whatever reason, they love being on the water. And I understand some of that and all that. I am extremely risk averse. And so, you're not going to find me building a home on a mountain. You're not going to, I'm not going to be the guy in the wilderness somewhere, like, where they've had these things in California and places like that. And you're surely not going to see me living on the water, because I just think that they're high risk. Florida, because of the number of storms that they've had and other things, homeowners insurance has gone through the roof. It's really becoming unaffordable to a lot of people in Florida. But thanks to Bidenomics, we also have this inflation that has pushed up the repair costs. This was the same thing for the auto industry. For the cars, anybody who has car insurance, I see lots of posts on social media about people complaining about their auto insurance rates going up, and I'm like, I understand that. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to try to mitigate mine, but when the insurers as a whole are taking their whole insured pool and they're looking at how much money they've got to put out for damage to repair a car, to repair parts of a home, or to rebuild a home entirely, it costs a lot more than it did 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And
the cost of everything went up. We are the average home in America at the peak of the Trump administration, before COVID started messing up the economy, was making $5,500 a year more than before he took office. now they're losing about 8,000 a year. And it's going down. So that's a, you know, in the from 2000 to 2016, the whole range of this was about $900, and now it's, you know, you're losing 8,000 a year because of inflation, because of high cost of everything driven by Bidenomics.
Yeah,
And
you
I
know, I
pray
mean,
he runs on his record. I pray that
he's trying. He's
he wants
trying.
to. And you know, the dopes behind him think it's a good idea. Yeah, let's talk about it. We got them bills passed, man. You know, it's like, okay, well, those bills are, you know, we can't afford the stuff you bought, and now you want to add more, and you want to do, you know. So the other day I was like looking at Facebook or Twitter or something, and you know, they're talking about it's time for nationalized Medicare, right? Medicare for all. And I'm like, the time for that, if you're going to do it, was 15 or 20 years ago. We can't afford it now. How can we even stand up a bureaucracy like that? You're 37 trillion. You know, we added $1 trillion to the debt in the first 4 months of this year. We're on pace for a $3 trillion deficit. That's, you know, spending more than we brought in this year by $3 trillion.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I agree with you though. I mean, in terms of, yeah, I'm very happy that, you know, that the Democrats have decided that Bidenomics is one of their key, you know, part of their platform about to run on. But you know, they seem to forget about how many holes can be poked through that, and the realities behind Bidenomics is not rosy. It's really grim. You
Yeah,
know,
they're talking about inflation. Okay, so we brought inflation down. Well, no, you haven't. Yeah, it's not true. You know, when Trump left office, the inflation rate was 1.4%. Now it's 3.2%. So that's more than double. That's double and a half, just about, right? So, and it was 9%. And they don't measure food and gas in the inflation. So, you know, the cost that Americans are paying for all the time, that's not counted in that total. And they can look at it and they can tell you that, like, the cost of food is something like 22% higher than when Biden took office. He's been a disaster. Retirement accounts down a third since he took office. You know, in every way that you can measure the economy, this has been very, very bad.
yeah, I mean, you know, they're trying to find some good news here by the fact that inflation is slowing down.
Yeah,
But you know, the underlying problem is that the amount of inflation we've had has pushed up kind of this base level. So, you know, food prices, all these other prices, auto prices, whatever, they are up substantially from when he took office.
right.
Those costs are now almost like baked into the cake. They're not going backwards. I mean, you know, employers gave lots of wage increases in an effort to kind of keep up with this inflation. You know, do you think these guys are going to go backwards? I mean, we're
Right.
seeing reports where, you know, raises are not being given as much as they were before. The types of jobs, you know, the pay, salaries offered to new workers is not as high as it was a year or two ago when people were clamoring, trying to compete with workers. But
$500,000 a month going from full-time to part-time.
yeah, but we've established kind of this, you know, we had all that fight for 15. Well, a lot of places, $15, you know, they've blown past that level. And you know, they're not going to go backwards. You know, that will incrementally go up one way or the other in time. And therefore, you know, we're saddled with these increased costs no matter what. And that's what's, you know, deceiving about this administration, is trying to paint this rosy picture on the economic front when it's like, hey, you know, I don't see my 86-cent a dozen eggs coming back anytime soon. You know, that, you know, there's kind of a,
Oh, gas.
yeah, there's kind of a base there, and
Right.
it's just not gonna get, you know, lower than, you know, a certain level. And we have to get used to that. I mean, you know, we've talked, you know, numerous times about gas prices. Gas prices are, you know, they're not going to go back to $1.99 or whatever or less. You know, this is, you know, we're in this $3, $4, $5 range for the time being, and probably for, for the immediate future, because of all the different factors that are going on in there. And the Democrats can rail all they want about the big evil corporations and big oil, and we want to tax their excess profits and stuff like that. I mean, Biden's going after big pharma. They want to control the drug prices and stuff like that. They think this is the way to do it, but this is all that government largesse, right? I mean, it's like the government can take care of all. You mentioned Medicare for all. I'm going to be very curious with my wife turning 65 in January.
You
when
said that on TV. You're so dead. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how this whole thing is going to work, because you basically, for insurance purposes, have to sign up for Medicare or if you sign up later, after, too much after you're 65, you'll get a penalty, and you'll have to pay even more for your Medicare. The Medicare premium isn't particularly expensive, but I don't know how the adjustment will be to my regular health care, because you still have to have some kind of health care as a backstop, because Medicare for all does not cover everything. You still, if you don't have another policy behind it, you're going to be forking out a lot of money.
Right. That's right.
So go ahead.
So they talk about like bringing this back, right? Well, I mean, it was $3.50 or $4 a gallon under Obama, and it did come back to $2 or $1.99 or $1.60 down south under Trump. So it can be done. It'll take some time, and it won't happen while Joe Biden is president, because he's not going to enact the policies. But the question that I ask all Democrats is, because there's a lot, they've gone off into, they're big into wealth inequality now, right? They sort of backed off. You hear, the discussion of the concept of woke, for instance, you hear our guys talking about that now. The left is not talking about being woke anymore. They got their finger on the stove, burned on the stove with that one, and they sort of backed off, right? But what they're talking about now is wealth inequality. The CEO makes 278,000 times as much as the line worker. Okay, so what, right? And it'll tell you, it's like, and the problem is, the reason we have inflation, according to these guys, is that the corporations are greedy. So my question is, the previous president was a billionaire, extravagant businessman, right? Well-known, splashy, name on hotels all over the world, whatnot, businessman. Wouldn't that one scream greed? Wouldn't that one tell the corporations, now's the time to jack up your prices and be as greedy as you can? Because, we have a greed head in chief running the country. No, Lunch Bucket Joe gets in, and all of a sudden these guys become greedy. They weren't greedy before, but now they are greedy. So what changed? Why did they become greedy under the guy who would seem to be their friend? So
yeah, and look, I mean, Lunch Bucket Joe is not exactly a middle class guy. I mean, he's got a good amount of wealth, right?
Right. A lot of it generated, like right now, he's making more money from China than he is from the U.S. Right, like about 3 times as much as from near we can figure, right? So he gets $999,999 a year from China for the Penn Biden Center, and there's like some other thing he's got working with them where he gets about $400,000 a year. So it's 3 times what he gets from us, he gets from them. So where do his allegiances lie? Why did the Secretary of State say that we won't protect Taiwan in a war with China? Did we buy that outcome, or is that just the general, feeling of the Biden administration anyway, right? So,
yeah, the thing about this Penn Biden Center and all this other stuff is just that I don't understand. I mean, why doesn't he just disavow this stuff, and I mean just really separate himself from all of this? I mean, it's got his name on it and all this stuff, but I mean he could come out and make some kind of stand here and separate, instead it just adds another cloud to everything under his administration. There's one thing after another, and with Hunter's problems and all of these other issues, it's just like you can't say that you're the cleanest guy around, because you've got all these weird things going on here that that raise suspicions about you and your personal life and your finances is like, when you're president of the United States, you need to move away from that. And I don't know, he should have done something right from the get-go. But the money is sometimes very alluring, right?
Right. And while we're on that topic, how did we first learn that there was something called the Penn Biden Center? It was because of the documents, right? We found out that Joe took some documents himself, and unlike Trump, who can claim that he declassified them with his brain or whatever, the vice president can never declassify. He doesn't have the power to declassify anything ever. Okay, so the ones he has definitely had not been declassified because he was unable to do it. He has not given them back. He has the documents he took. He's been shifty about answering questions on it. The process, we had a special counsel, a guy named Hugh or Huey or something like that. Hur, H-U-R, that's his name, Patrick Hur, who was appointed to look into Biden's document thing. And he asked him about it. Biden was asked about this the other day, and he said the guy has not asked for an interview or any information about these papers. He goes, are you going to sit with an interview with him? And he goes, well, he hasn't asked for that or anything else. Okay, so what is he investigating? What's he looking into, right? This is a guy appointed by Merrick Garland, to like clean up the Biden document problem and establish who has what and what they doing with it and so forth. Hasn't even asked to talk to the president or anyone working for the president to determine where the documents are, and they've not been returned. So, they're hiding something, and they have a friendly Justice Department who's not looking into it. One of the things is like the Justice Department is breathtaking corruption, really unprecedented levels of corruption there now. The people get in trouble talking about defunding it. And I don't know, I don't think you can defund it as a constitutionally, mandated thing that you have to have, right? You have to have somebody to carry out the work of the Attorney General. But, there needs to be a house cleaning there to end all house cleanings.
Yeah, I mean, does Merrick Garland really have much of any credibility, left at this point? I mean, based on who he's appointed, for these special counsels and all these kinds of things, it kind of makes you wonder about, what his plan was over there, and how it's all coming out there, because it just seems like it's if it wasn't politicized before, it's definitely politicized now.
Right.
And he's just, I don't know, he's just kind of torn the DOJ to shreds.
Right. And he's going after Catholics and parents who attend school board meetings, and they deny it. And they're like, well, here's the paperwork. Here's the letter of you saying go after the Catholics. So he's caught in numerous lies. The House wants to impeach him. The Biden administration, they're not going to move him because who else could they get confirmed in the first place? And second place, by the way, I always like to point this out. Everyone from time to time finds themselves wanting to choke the turtle, right? But the turtle did spare us Merrick Garland being on the Supreme Court, and not without some political risk. So when you're writing your political obit of the turtle, remember that he did keep this scumbag off the Supreme Court, and that alone is worthwhile.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, once again, I can't say I'm the biggest fan of McConnell in a lot of ways, but he is such a master at his craft and his ability to do that. And as you said, getting us, keeping Garland off the court was huge.
It took guts, and we could have lost that election over that.
Yeah. So yeah, he's done a masterful job, and I think people should give him credit for these types of things. Is that you don't have to agree with these people on everything that they do, but I think you should respect them, that they understand the process. They're inside, they know, and and he worked that very, very well, as you said, not without some political risk on his part for that. But he's quite the survivor on this. I mean, it's amazing. Right. He's had quite a career for that. So,
and while we're on the topic of that, by the way, of people who understand the process, So did you watch any of the Republican debate?
I was not able to.
So I watched the Tucker thing and until that ended and switched over. So I saw about the last 45 minutes of it. The only one on the stage who understands the process is Nikki Haley. You may not, there's another one. I find myself, vehemently disagreeing with her sometimes, but like all of them were talking about like how Washington works, and she was the only one with any real clue of where these issues stand and how they might be moved forward. So when you're thinking about that, she's been there. She's been the closest to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think she won. I think she got a lot of praise for her performance. Hers was steady by everything I saw there, and she stayed pretty much on point. Whereas the others kind of wound up kind of all over the board. And I mean, it definitely gave Vivek kind of a boost in some ways, but it also put him under the microscope even more for some of the things he says. He can be a little bit loose and unhinged with some things. He's young,
Right.
still, and everything like that. And he definitely knows how to needle the liberals on things. But I don't know. I mean, Nikki came out, I guess, looking okay, pretty good. And I guess DeSantis didn't really hurt himself, right? I mean, he didn't come out with anything that was really bold, and it said that he was going to be the front runner and the real challenge, the real only challenge to Trump at this point in time. But considering the issues that his campaign has had, I guess at least he held his ground.
Yeah, he's lost half his support in the last month.
Yeah, I mean, he
pretty powerful.
He badly needs something there. But I mean, I think the debate's good for giving people a chance to see who these people are a little bit. I did see some report that someone was saying that we need a kind of a debate without moderators. I'm not quite sure who control. Somebody's got to be there to control it. I don't know,
right?
And all that. But so that I don't think that really flies. But I think it's the frustration that no matter what debate it is, particularly with Republicans, though, that you always the concern there is there's always going to be people complain about the questions that were asked and how their candidate was treated, right? So there's
they were not, they were pretty inept. The two people from Fox who did it were not good. Did not contribute to getting good information out of the candidates. And probably both should be replaced.
And maybe that'll happen down the line in terms of we'll see what happens with future debates, in terms of who's going to do what. But I guess Suarez is more or less a casualty of that. Never really got any traction. I mean,
he made a mistake too. He said something he wasn't supposed to say, and I can't remember even what it was. Poor guy. But yeah, he never got any traction, and he made a mistake that made him sound racist, I think. And first one to realize and quit wasting money on it.
Yeah. So I mean, my next thing is like with Will Hurd or Larry Elder. How long do they try to keep this thing going for themselves? And
Will Hurd, Larry Elder, I could see saying, "Okay, I'm not getting traction. I'm going away." But Will Hurd is not in the race to win it. He's in the race to attack Trump. And so you got to remember that. Like, should we ever give him any money out of the Republican Party pot anymore? And I would say no. Like, you win, but you've been pretty much on a kill mission against the Republican Party since you got out of Congress. I don't know why we're paying your bills for anything.
So what about Christie and Tim Scott, Mike Pence? I mean, where do you see them at this point? I mean,
Christie's in the same boat as Will Hurd. He's just in the race to attack Trump. He has no chance. His support has gone down too. You said Tim Scott. He's a nice guy who gives some good answers, but I don't think I don't think people look at him and see a president for whatever reason. Pence, there is a solid phalanx of Republicans who could support Pence. I wouldn't be surprised if he emerges as the the number 2 guy. I would not even be surprised if Trump is the nominee, which it now looks like he will be, that he makes Pence a running mate again. It works. Everybody's, oh, they hate each other, and he didn't do this and that, and on January 6th. Trump is known for forgiving people and working stuff out with people that he thinks he needs. So I wouldn't. That would not surprise me at all if he was the vice president again. He's proven in that job. Other than January 6th, they worked pretty well together. So I could see that happening, and I see him not. When they ask him, would you support Trump? He says yes. And he splits it's a very hair splitting issue. He gives about the constitutionality of what he could or couldn't do on January 6th. And he said nothing to disagree with Trump. What Trump says about it, what he's come out with in the last few days, is the day after January 6th, Congress met and passed a law that said that, soon into the next Congress, passed a law saying the vice president cannot change the votes anymore. So Trump's argument is, if they passed a law saying he can't, then before they passed the law, he could have, right? I mean, why? Otherwise, you wouldn't need the law. So, I don't know. It's water under the bridge now, but he does have a point there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see that reaction from some people. I think, this was just to make sure we don't have any more future events kind of like that again on either side. But January 6th was a very unusual occurrence. It's an interesting thing. I mean, would Pence accept a role as a vice president? Could he stand to to deal with Trump for another 4 years?
Well, I mean, most of that time they worked together pretty productively. Pence was happy with what he was doing. So yeah, I could see that happening.
What about some of these other guys that are running? I mean, are they kind of auditioning in a sense also either for the VP role or for a cabinet role too? If they're trying to,
I think there's a lot of cabinet role people in there. That's definitely what Vivek's doing. Christie is there because he knows he'll never be allowed into the cabinet. He found that out last time. I guess Trump. One of the things Trump said on the Tucker deal is that Christie's bitter because he didn't get a cabinet post in the last when Trump was president. And he said, but we just couldn't trust him, right? We kept hearing things, and he'd say one thing to your face and one thing somewhere else, and we couldn't. We can't have a guy that we can't trust. So he's been running his mouth about Trump for a long time, and he's now got to live with that to the extent he can.
Yeah, I'd be kind of curious. I mean, it would be interesting if Trump got elected and he took Vivek and say, put him in a treasury role or something like that.
Yeah, HHS, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely would attract a lot of attention. Though sometimes Trump doesn't necessarily want his people getting more attention than he does, but Vivek Ramaswamy has definitely been a very pro-Trump guy. In essence, I guess saying like, he loves the Trump policies, but we need somebody, we need somebody like that, just not Donald Trump. He wants to be that guy.
Right.
So he's very wedded to the Trump, policies, whereas the other candidates are, they're walking that fine line that they don't want to alienate that Trump base, which is huge, but they also want to be able to be their own person and say, this is what, to me, in the end, I just want these Republican candidates, whether or not it's 5, 10, 15 of them, whatever the number is going to be. I want them to talk about Joe Biden, the Democrats, what's wrong with this country and what they're going to do to change the course or fix things and go course correct, get back to where we need to be. Hopefully they've learned some lessons from the past that attacking each other really doesn't do a lot of good in general. But Biden is so vulnerable to me. On Bidenomics and like this, poke the holes through there and just remind people over and over and over again how bad this administration has been on policies from A to Z, and the Republicans will just waltz right in.
Right. That's right. But it has to be Trump. I don't think that any of the rest of them can get enough votes.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch gears. We'll kind of bounce back around. I did on this whole thing with Russia and Ukraine, I was noticing about the Russian economy is apparently really starting now to feel the effects of the sanctions. The ruble has fallen dramatically. Inflation is going up. The central bank in Russia is raising their interest rates to very high levels to try to manage things. But they're hurting there while they're fighting a war. Not a good place for them to be, and at this point in time. And I mean, there's still workarounds to the sanctions. I mean, that's what's kept them afloat to this point in time. But it definitely is starting to have some effect there, and the population is starting to really feel the effects of Putin's policies now.
Right? They can't. The rest of the world, all the other oil producers are enjoying record high prices, but not Russia, because Russia is selling it on an alternate market that it has to create itself, and so for far less. So yeah, the energy and minerals and so forth that's the one thing to think about is, like, other than extraction industries, right? Oil and gas, minerals, stuff like that. What does Russia sell the world? What do they give us? Right? And we need the oil, we need the gas, we need the coal they have, we need the minerals they have. They have some mineral deposits that's the only place on earth they are, or other places where they have a lot of stuff that we need, especially with the more we're trying to electrify the world and so forth. But they don't really make anything that we can't do without. Like, we make things here, right? We take little parts that you wouldn't want, we put them together, and then create something you do want, And so, that's a big difference. That's they have lived on extractive industries and basically political force for a long time, and now political force, you're limited to people who don't have the money to help you. And extractive industries is a volatile and unpredictable, and right now, given the sanctions and so forth, unfavorable place for them.
Yeah, and then, how many people has he taken, working people out of the economy to go fight his war?
Right. I mean, it's that I think they're raising the draft age again to 30 or 31. I mean, that's some older coots out there with the guns, I don't know. And then you get like 2 or 3 days of training, so you're vulnerable. I mean, one of the things happened last night. The Ukrainians are getting better at drones, so they launched some drone attacks 400 miles into Russia. So, and not that far from Ukraine, from Moscow. So, they're starting to be able to make it hurt on the Russian side of the border too. So, it'll be interesting to see where the public opinion goes on this, especially with, because it's pretty obvious Putin had Prigozhin killed, if indeed Prigozhin is dead. He made a bunch of people change their name to the same as his, so that he can put them on flight logs, so you can't really tell which plane he is actually on. So, because there's a Prigozhin on, the next 7 planes, which one do you blow up, right? So, you can see him waving from Africa one day here soon, or not.
Yeah, that whole thing, just I think you had talked about this, well back, when after Prigozhin had really gone up against Putin and all this stuff, like, kind of not long for the world, I'd be watch my back, kind of a thing like that. You were kind of, and very much so. I mean, Putin had given him some freedom. I mean, he still had the Wagner group in Africa, and was doing well there and everything like that. But if he is indeed dead, I mean, he's like, how can you not point the finger towards the Kremlin and say, we got rid of we got rid of this guy. We'll never go to admit we got rid of this guy, but we got rid of this guy, and just another line of people that somehow have magically been killed while Putin's been in power, that have opposed him.
What was the phrase they used? Because even the Kremlin said, well, that we're investigating this crash, and it seems like it was some interesting circumstances. Yeah. It's not your traditional, a wing fell off or whatever. appears like some other stuff was involved. So, and like one of my friends said, who gets on a plane with that guy, right? I'll be there.
Well, that's another point. I thought it's like the guy's a marked man. You don't want to travel with a marked man.
No.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's actually a very good point. It's like if if you're being targeted by Putin, or any kind of warlord or anything like that, anybody who has this penchant for doing this kind of thing, it's like you want to stay as far away as you can when they travel.
Yeah. Not riding a plane with them.
Yeah, that's just a very interesting point. That's unbelievable in terms of what goes on in there. Go back to to good old lunch bucket Joe here or whatever. So what was this? This AP NORC poll. Majority of the people polled said that Biden was too old. I mean, I think what was it? 89% of Republicans and 69% of Democrats. And then there was something. There was this other thing that came up too, where people were asked like the first word that comes to your mind when you say Joe Biden, and that wasn't good either. It was like old, dementia, something.
Yeah,
How do you run for president under this? I mean, it's just like. Karine Jean-Pierre is out there on Jake Tapper trying to defend Joe Biden's age. For instance, Jake Tapper's just like, what are you talking about?
Well, I will say this. So, you and me have both been in the looking at leftist media lies business for a long time. You can tell, like, when they've arrived at a hard truth and they don't, it's negative on their boy, so they don't know what to do. This appears to be one of those times. They have, the networks, the people who deal with him every day are like, okay, this guy has taken a step backwards since he became president. He has become less alert, adroit, whatever, right? So they're trying to say it without saying it, but it's becoming increasingly hard to do. You have even the Washington Post put out a story here recently about all the things his staff does to make it easier for him to remember where to be and what to do and not screw up. And that's not even counting the questions with the answers and the picture of the reporter to make sure you call in the right one, the right order, and so forth. So, that's a lot of, Trump never did that. Trump walked by the driveway. There's 15 reporters there. He would stop and answer their questions, totally unknowing, what the questions would be. He was prepared and he could give them an answer, right? It wasn't, well, you got to ask my staff or we'll get back to you. He knew the answer, right? So, that people don't understand. That makes a huge difference. And so, yeah, you have about 70% of the Democrats saying by the time I think the AP question, what they actually asked was, by the time he gets through with what would be his second term, will he be too old? And, he'll be 86 and he is slipping now. And it appears to be that the slippage is accelerating, right? You can't see behind closed doors, but that appears to be the deal. It also explains why, he has already spent more time on vacation than Trump did in Trump's entire 4 years, because it's easier to keep him, to manage. You see him on the beach trying to pick up that beach chair. It's like a 14-ounce chair, just like trying to pick it up. So, but you see these things, right? But they look like, hey, he's an old dude at the beach, right? He's okay. And you remember, you go back to the 2020. The first debate, like we were told, like Joe's, spitting on the paper and he can't look at the camera and he can't stand up and he can't give an answer. And he got out there and he was pretty sharp that night. He answered all the questions. He, he understood what was being asked of him and so forth. And, that had a lot to do with the election swinging to Joe, because people were like, okay, they're lying to us about this. What else are they lying? Now, I don't know if you saw the Washington Post this morning, there was a piece by Mark Thiessen, who said, AEI guy, who said, who correctly said the original sin of the Biden presidency was Afghanistan, right? They didn't get out of there. They lied about it. They lied repeatedly. You can see on the camera, oh yeah, we got this under control. and we're watching TV, and it's like, that's not under control, buddy. So we learned that he was incompetent, and he was willing to, go against the advice of his advisors and so forth to do something to register a political accomplishment, and B, that they were willing to lie to your face even though they know you had access to the evidence. So, he went from, if you look at the Rasmussen polling, right? He was at about 54% when this happened. He went down into, I think he got as low as 37 at one point, and started to bounce back and level out. But he's spent about 2 days above 50% since then. He's in the low to mid 40s to high 40s. Now, Rasmussen rates him better than any other pollster, right? Something to remember, when a Republican gets in power and people say, oh, that's just Rasmussen puffing it up for the right winger. He's also puffing it up for Joe. So, I don't know where he stands, but it does not look to me like he's politically palatable for 2024. And I think that the Democrats also realize this. And I think that's why you're starting to see, more revelations about the scandals coming out, more things happening that, no one rushing out to protect Joe. I remain convinced that if you get an impeachment before the Senate and you have the facts, that they will vote to remove, because it lets them all run for president.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that kind of works out. But the Democrats, the insiders, they have got to be extremely worried about Biden running for re-election.
Yeah,
they've got the old man who has shown, as we've been saying, has slipped mightily from when he first entered office. He's just deteriorated that physically and mentally. They've got number two. They've got Kamala right behind him, and there's no confidence in her at all. So they've got this ticket that is just kind of like a death trap for them. This is really bad. One of the things about Karine Jean-Pierre, as she was talking to Jake Tapper, she was trying to finish this as, we've talked to reporters in the White House press corps, and they said they have a hard time keeping up with him because he's always working, and as you just mentioned, vacations, right? He may set the all-time record for vacations by a president,
right?
Because he's always unavailable, because he's always somewhere else, doing something. Just it's like he's the commander in chief, but he's not spending much time, on the job these days. It's a protective thing. Since they can't hide him in his basement during this campaign, the best they can do, I guess, is to take frequent vacations, because the media kind of goes along with presidential vacations. Well, he's the president, he needs to decompress, deserving that.
Tough job.
It's a tough job. But exactly what has Joe done that has been so tough since he's been in there, except kind of wreck our economy?
Yeah.
While saying exactly the opposite. And this guy, I don't know. We've both seen tons of politicians who are very adept at lying and very really good at it, and they can get away with it. I don't know. I think the lies of Joe Biden bother me more than just about any other politician I've ever run across, because I think they're just way too blatant at this point, and it just shows complete incompetence.
You can lie to me, but don't insult my intelligence.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Basically, that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's and that's kind of where we are. It's like he's lying to us, but he's also insulting our intelligence.
Right.
And it's becoming, it continues to become a stretch. The media is still trying to support him, but it every day gets harder to back things up. You've got crazy, KJP out there, and she's not doing them any good. But the problem is that they can't put Joe in front of the microphone in a press conference.
You can't let him take these questions.
No, you can't.
Questions are getting tough because you have the prosecutor in Ukraine saying, no, they fired me because I was investigating Burisma. You have the former president saying he had to give a $5 million bribe to Hunter and another $5 million to Joe to get the prosecutor off Burisma's back. You have their business partner saying, yeah, this is precisely what they did and how they did it. Oh, they're all lying. All those people are lying for no reason. They're just lying. So he's getting to the point where, and like the media just as well, they've gotten to the point where, okay, Hunter did whatever y'all said he did, but it didn't have anything to do with Joe. And it's like, well, 24 times he called into these meetings, right? And we all know how this works, and he can't deny that. And now they have these aliases, right? So they're looking through these aliases. All presidents or most presidents, most people in this thing have alias email accounts because they don't want people hacking it or whatever. They want to make it a little bit harder to get to the person if you happen to get into the computer. And okay, that's fine. They all have done that. And that's not the problem. But what emails, like the records people said yesterday, have 5,400 emails to and from Joe's various aliases. So okay, let's look at those emails, right? Let's see what he was saying and to whom. One of them appears to be him sending some secret information. I don't think it was top secret. I think it was just secret to Hunter and Hunter alone from one of these anonymous accounts, one of these alias accounts. So, why are you doing that? Why does he need security information, right? He's just, Trump is not sending this to Eric, right? It's like, why are you sending this to him? Because this is your business. This is your family business. And this is how y'all do it. So I think that a lot of Democrats are saying this is a level of corruption we don't really want to be associated with. I was absolutely stunned to hear Jamie Raskin turn on him and say, yeah, Hunter's a scumbag. He did some bad stuff. Don't know about the dad, but the Hunter, he's terrible. So it's like, you can see them trying to cleave Hunter off from Joe because they're, the idea, the notion that, we're going to say the laptop's not real and chain of custody and all this kind of nonsense is out the window. Hunter tried to plead to facts gleaned from the laptop, right? His guilty plea is like, okay, the stuff on the laptop that you got led to me being charged with this, and I agree those charges are true. Okay, so that's Hunter stipulating to the laptop. So there will be no more denying that the laptop is real and that it's really his and the stuff on it is accurate. So, there's not a lot of wiggle room they have here. And now you have a judge who is not going to accept, a sweetheart deal. So you're going to have to play it straight. And you're going to have to either work out something that that's acceptable to the public and it's, passes the smell test, which will have to include jail time for Hunter, or you're going to have to take it to trial, which will unearth a lot of nonsense that Joe doesn't want in the public eye.
Yeah, there's no way Democrats or the Biden family want Hunter to go to trial. And the Democrats, I think they have made that kind of strategic decision. It's like, okay, look, the Hunter thing is bad. And the more we let it go and don't, as you said, cleave it off from Joe, the worse it's going to get as we get into this, the heat of the 2024 campaign. So, we're going to sacrifice Hunter, and let him go on his own there and deal with that, hoping that it doesn't affect the dad. Joe has got plenty of problems on his own, at this point in time. As I said, you can't put Joe in front of a camera at a press conference. So, you put up the inept press secretary, KJP, for which just about everybody thinks she's pretty inept. She has proven this one of the worst press secretaries I've ever seen, if not the worst press secretary for a president I've ever seen. But, once again, as we've talked before, it's like, where do they go? She's a black lesbian, in this administration. You can't fire her because there'll be a whole nother wing of people saying, well, you're being, you're firing her because she's a black lesbian and all this stuff. It's like, no, she's incompetent. But when he went for, this is one of the things, when Biden decided that he was going to have this diverse cabinet, he also put himself into a corner that if they proved to be inept, he didn't have anywhere to
Yeah,
run.
you're stuck with him. You're stuck with her. You're stuck with Ketanji Brown Jackson, who doesn't know what a woman is, and says we're
You've
we're,
got
we're
your
judging on
favorite.
our lived experiences. Like,
Yeah,
excuse me.
yeah. One of your favorites, Deb Holland. I mean, where do they
Yeah,
go? They made all these diversity picks, and they are stuck. They can't easily replace them. I mean, if he manages to somehow get reelected, he could go ahead and do that, because that wouldn't be unusual for cabinet people to leave at that mark. But a lot of them leave anywhere between year 2 and year 4 anyway, for various reasons.
right.
But he is really stuck with all of these things, and it just puts him into a real bind in terms of what the administration can really do. He doesn't have a lot of levers to be able to pull at this stage. So it doesn't, it's not looking good for that. And as much as the Democrats, they would say, yeah, we want to run against Trump. They really don't want to run against
No,
Trump.
that's the 91 articles of proof of that.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I mean, 2020 election, there was a lot of things going on there. But a Biden, under today's circumstances, a Biden, Trump rematch would be very different in my mind.
I
You
do
know,
too. I think so
I
too.
think the results would be dramatically different, and I think that scares the Democrats too.
Right. Here's the
Um,
other thing about that. So, I've been looking at this research. What happens is the Democrats have another problem. It's like it's the reverse of what I talked about Biden in the first debate in 2020, coming out not spitting on himself. Everybody's like, okay, that was a lie. Okay, the Democrats, they don't, they all look you in the eye with a straight face, and they're like, there's no evidence against Joe. There's a mountain of evidence against Joe, and it's out there. It's been publicly reported. It's available. You could get it. But they don't. They don't get it. They don't know about it. Their media doesn't. They just say, hey, they're just after Joe because of Trump, to get the heat off of Trump, right? So they're not being told what's going on. So at some point, like when it gets to impeachment or court proceedings, right, then that's not spinnable. The judge says what the judge says. The Senate says what the Senate says, right? So at that point, they're going to be very shocked to learn that there was a lot of wrongdoing that everybody but them knew about. And like MRC did a study where they said, okay, here's a bunch of news events that are either bad for Biden or good for Trump. Have you heard about them? And in all the cases, they're sort of picked to produce a result. But in all the cases, like the conservative audience, the conservatives they talked to knew way more about what's going on in Washington than the leftists, right? They don't know. Their media doesn't tell them because they're trying to protect Biden. So, and they don't consider, they would not, if their TV stops on Fox, they take it in to get repaired, right? They're not going to watch 1 second of it to find out any other information.
Yeah, and I'm not the kind of guy who's going to scoop everything up about as truth that comes out, but there's such a volume of things that are out there. It's like you got to sift through it and figure out what's right, what's true and what's not. The media is not very, they don't want to deal with that, and so so there's kind of this blackout, on the liberal side for this, and as a result, I mean, I would definitely agree with MRC. The study there is that conservatives, Republicans, whatever. We are more up to date. We have more knowledge of what's happening in Washington than the other side, at this point in time. All right, we're running a little low on time here. Quick take on what's going on here with his court date coming up before Super Tuesday, and Fani Willis wanting to try everybody at once.
I don't think that court date is going to survive. I think it'll be delayed at least once, maybe twice, because there is a lot of evidentiary work that has to go on here. She wants a slam job. I'm not sure that's right for her because, she's vulnerable on one thing. If you get a judge to say this doesn't look like a RICO case, that she's down to like 4 or 5 misdemeanors against various people. Right. You take that RICO element out. And this is not, RICO was drug kingpins and stuff like that. This was not a drug kingpin, right? This was, oh my gosh, they stole the election. What do we do about it? I think Trump will have it by Super Tuesday. If it actually goes to trial that day, he will have it spun into one of the great PR stunts of all time, and it will help him electorally.
Yeah,
you see these things on Twitter. Like it's usually black people coming on and say, "Man, the way they're treating Trump. Like I didn't even like Trump before, but I see the way they're hustling him, and I'm with him now." And so I don't know. Everybody can like make things happen on Twitter, right? You pay somebody to go on Twitter and say whatever, or libs of TikTok or whatever. But that idea is out there that by treating him like this, everyone who feels like they were treated like this, like they were dealt with unfairly to produce some other result, now identifies with Trump.
All right, very good. All right, I'll let you wrap up with give you another minute to close it out.
What else is on here? The Gadsden flag thing was that's ridiculous. And then did you see the video? I mean, that woman is like, well, the school district says it has to do with racism. Like, lady, it's the original American flag. It's before we had the Stars and Stripes, we had this flag, right? It's for all America. It had nothing to do with slavery. Well, we're just following the policy. So, I mean, hopefully she will get yeeted into like the fourth dimension of space or whatever, and anybody on the school board, I mean, painlessly, right?
Yeah.
But people got to understand, you can't control the thoughts of the people who come through the door, right? You're impinging on some stuff that you have no business impinging on.
Yeah, the thing too is, it's also, and it's an administrator. It wasn't like anybody complained about this, right? It's school people. It's this kid had this innocent thing. Now we're saying that things tied to the American Revolution are racist now too. So all this is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's farcical now. Also, Joe the plumber died. During he was playing throwing a football with his kid in the front yard, and Obama drove by on a campaign stop. Oh, there's a working man. I'll stop talking to him, get me some working man quotes, And he's like, well, you're going to raise taxes on me, and became a sort of a right-wing hero. I don't think we ever really knew what to do with him.
Yeah.
Once they got him, then it was sort of like, we got him. And, then like his personal life was as messy as most people's personal life is. And that became a problem for him too. Also, did you see that the Pope had some remarks the other day? He said the Catholic Church in the United States is replacing faith with ideology, and that it's they're on to things that aren't about the faith, and like morality changes. What's right or wrong changes, and they have to understand that it changes, and it's like okay. Think we write the checks that pay about 90% of your bills? It says it to a group of Jesuit priests in Portugal or somewhere, right? So, that's not a good look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he definitely riled up a few people with his remarks. All right. Once again, thank you everybody for joining us today, and hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America, and we will be seeing you again next week.